content. In today's time with the Minerals Commission, we are looking at local content and the opportunities for local participation in our mining industry. And for today's edition, we'll look at the contribution of the local content and how they can participate to improve the economy of Ghana and challenges, if any, as well as the outlook for this policy. I'm here in the studio with Mr. Amin-Sackey, Director, Policy Planning and Mineral Titles of the Minerals Commission. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Last week, we had the opportunity to talk about which specific areas local companies can get access to when it comes to mining. And I remember we talked about fuel and catering and haulage and I think security as well.
Yes.
And he made us understand that we could save upwards of $400 million if we keep these businesses in our shows or on our shows.
Okay.
So he gave us ideas about what specifics Ghanaian companies could get into and the fact that they could partner other companies to even make those services available on the local front. And I remember that at a point I wanted to ask him, it sounds like a clear-cut plan, but I'm not sure it's as straightforward as it may seem to some. So what could possibly go wrong with local participation, local content in our mining industry? What challenges would there be?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. As my acting CEO told you last week, there are certain services which have been reserved for Ghanaians under local content. I think that is one good thing about the local content regulation that we have for the mining industry. And you rightly mentioned some of the services, which include provision of security services, catering services, haulage services, supply of fuel to the mining industry. These are reserved for Ghanaians, and there is no way that an expatriate or foreign-controlled company will be allowed to provide these services to the mining industry. And as he rightly put it, it is true that hitherto, before the passage of the regulation, all these services were being provided by expatriates. I mean, security services were being provided by expatriates, haulage services being done by expatriates, catering services being done by expatriates, and then haulage service also being done by the expatriates. We are enjoined by law, the regulation, that the Minerals Commission should publish what we call the local procurement list annually. And this local procurement list should contain items, goods and services that we believe can be provided by locals in the country and should be procured by the mining companies. We started off with 8 items. We increased it to 19, and now as we speak we have 29 items on the local procurement list. Now the law also enjoins mining companies to submit what we call 5-year procurement plan to the Minerals Commission for approval. In submitting the 5-year procurement plan, the companies are required to take into account the items that we have on the local procurement list. So what it means is that once you submit your plan and it is approved, and you indicate in your plan the proportions that you are going to procure locally, if you fail to do that, it means that you breach the regulation and you can be sanctioned. We have data from 2014 to 2019 on how the mining companies performed in respect to the implementation of their plan. And as he told you, let me look at the total procurement first. Now, from 2014, about 183 million were spent by mining companies on procurement of 8 items, which were on the list at the time. The list was increased to 2019. So, as at 2016, the total procurement by mining companies in respect of the 19 items were 394 million. Now, as at 2019, that is 2 years ago, we had 29 items, and about $1.483 billion were spent by mining companies on these items. This is the total procurement. Now, I will narrow it down to how much was spent by local companies that are in country and are providing these services to the mining industry. In 2019, out of the 1.46 billion, about 1.156 was spent on local procurement in the mining industry. If you want the specifics, if I pick catering services, about $25 million was spent on provision of catering services to the mining industry in 2019 only. If you pick security services, $13 million was spent on provision of security.
So with all these figures, how much comes to government of Ghana to support economic activities? And I'll come back to my question on what the challenges have been, because we haven't touched on that yet. So
that will be payment of corporate income tax by these companies to the Ghana government through the GRA. And once these companies employ Ghanaians, definitely they are going to pay their state contributions. There will be payee to government, that is the income tax paid by these employees to Ghana government. So that is one of the reasons why we believe that it's important to have companies in country providing such services to the mining companies, rather than having people from outside the country providing these services. You asked about the challenges. Yes, implementing local content is not easy. One of the challenges we find is that we do not have a lot of industries in country to produce the inputs that are required by mining companies. So what happens is that we more or less having a situation where locals will import the items into the country and supply to the mining industry. There is a challenge there. Assuming that we have a lot of local industries, a lot of industries established in country, then we will not be in a situation where suppliers will have to import and supply to the mining industry. There will be direct supply to the mining industry. So the situation we find ourselves puts us in a situation where we seem to be glorifying imports, and that is not the best. We've also had the issue with the suppliers when it comes to the delay in supplying to the mining industry, the lead time delays. There have been a lot of complaints from the mining companies on these local suppliers failing to supply at the time that they are supposed to supply to them. Of course, let me also say that there have also been some infractions on behalf of the mining companies in paying these suppliers on time. There are some contractual arrangements to pay these suppliers within 30 days or 60 days from supply of this item. But we've had instances where it's taken about 90 days and these suppliers have not been paid. And these are also, I believe that these are challenges that we need to look at.
And how are all these managed by the Commission? Because I'm sure that people make official complaints, and then how are they handled?
Thank you very much. We engage suppliers a lot. At the end of every year, what we do is that after the mining companies have submitted the plans or the implementation of the local plan, we evaluate the performance of the mining companies in respect to the procurement plans that have been approved for them to implement. At that function, we engage all the mining companies and let them know the shortfalls. We also engage suppliers and let them know their shortfalls. We engage to also know the concerns that these suppliers have, and then carry it on to the mining companies.
And what are we registering in terms of numbers? So to say how many Ghanaian companies have been registered, and how are they effectively contributing these to the provision of these services to the mining industry?
Thank you. I think as we speak now, we have about 90 90 companies that have been registered with the Minerals Commission to provide services to the mining industries, varying services. There are those, apart from the provision of catering services and others, there are other services that are open to everyone. It could be provided by foreign companies, it could be provided by Ghanaians. And there are some Ghanaians who are also providing such services as well. All put together, we have about 90 companies owned by Ghanaians that are providing services to the mining industry.
Last week, when I spoke to your acting CEO, we talked about human resource and the education or the training avenues available to make sure that the local market has enough to provide these services, and even, if possible, take over some of the ones that are out that can be done by expatriates. How is that development system working out?
As part of the regulation, I think we have dealt with the procurement aspect. Now let me move to the human resource aspect, as we just asked. Mining companies, once again, are required to submit localization plan to the Minerals Commission. In the localization plan, you indicate the positions that are available in your company for the execution of your task. You need to also identify to us these positions, which ones are occupied by expatriates and which ones are occupied by Ghanaians. The law says that there is a threshold of expatriates that you can have, depending on the total senior staff that you have in your establishment. And for those who have mining lease, that is those who can mine, it is 5% of the total senior staff. What this means is that if you have 100 senior staff, you can only have 5 expatriates. Now, at commencement of your operations, it is 10%. But 3 years after your commencement of your operation, you have to reduce it to 5%. What this means is that no matter what, as long as your total number of senior staff remains as it is, you will have to send some of the expatriates home. So it behoves on the companies themselves to make sure that training is given to Ghanaians so that they can take over from the expatriates when they leave. Apart from this, and this goes for the support services as well, because there are certain foreign companies that are providing support services to the mining industry, and they will also require some expatriates. But in their case, it is not 5%, depending on the nature of services that you provide to the mining industry. The regulation has stipulated the number of expatriates that you require. But even in their cases, they are also required to provide training to the Ghanaians so that they can take over from the expatriates when they leave the system. In supplying us with the localization plan, mining companies provided the individual development plan of Ghanaians in their establishment. Ghanaians that have been identified as counterparts to expatriates working in the company. And they are giving a big conscious effort to give them training that will enable them to take over from expatriates when the due date for the localization of that position is due.
But then the acting CEO last week alluded to the fact that sometimes before even that time is due, those persons who are being trained are poached, or they are moved to, or they move to other businesses.
That is true. That is one of the challenges we also find ourselves in when it comes to human resources. It appears that people working in the mining industry in Ghana are sought after by companies outside the country. So once somebody finds himself in a critical position, is given training to take over from expatriate, he is also being sought after as an expatriate in other countries. So you find a lot of Ghanaians working as expatriates in Mali, Burkina Faso, and other places. And that is a challenge for us.
But what's the plan to make that stop, or to reduce
we should train more people. We should identify more counterparts rather than one counterpart. So if you have an expatriate, nothing stops you from having more than one counterpart. You can have 2 or 3 counterparts understanding the expatriate. Of course, the mining companies will say that it is cost, but we believe that it is also workable. You have a number of persons understanding the expatriate. We do not believe that we will have all the 3 leaving the country at the same time.
Could happen, especially. I'm tempted to think that it could be about remuneration, because obviously expatriates earn more than
locals. Yes.
Yes.
It happens everywhere, and that is probably the reason why people want to go outside and also be seen or become expatriates. Because if you are an expatriate, there are certain allowances that you enjoy, which for me, working in my own country, will not enjoy. The challenge here is that we will expect that at least the basic salary that will be given to an expatriate should be given to the local when he takes over from the expatriate. And these are things that we are in talks with the Chamber of Mines and the other players in the industry to see how we can work around it.
I was going to come to that on the collaboration between the Minerals Commission and its other stakeholders. Okay. How do you all work together to iron out your differences? Because I'm sure that the mandates are different and more specific to specific organizations. So how do you ensure that it all comes together to work towards the common goal?
We have a good relationship with the Ghana Chamber of Mines and then AGI. And I'll say that, in fact, when we were developing the local procurement list for the first time, we did it together with the Chamber of Mines. Together we identified the items that are required by the mining industry, the inputs that are required by the mining industry, and together we were able to agree on those that we believe that mining companies spent about 80% of their money on. So we have that kind of collaboration with them. When there was a time that we realized that electrical cables were not being procured by mining companies locally, together with the chamber, we were able to have a workshop to deal with the issue and to find out the reasons why mining companies were not procuring these items. When we were able to identify the causes, together with them again and Ghana Standards Board, we've been able to develop standards for the cables that are being used in the mining industry in Ghana, because that was one of the challenges that we identified. So we will work together with the chamber on this issue. Yes, it is an association of the mining companies. It has its mandate. We also, as regulators of the industry, have our mandate. But it is important that the regulator also collaborates effectively with the regulatee so that we'll be able to achieve your goals.
When you talk about local companies sourcing things locally, for example, government policy like the 1D, 1F, and those other ones that aim at boosting local capacity or local manufacturing, do you have engagement with some of these heads of institutions, for example, these factories or these companies that produce local raw material and products, to help you to, meet the demand, so that way imports can be reduced and then delivery times can also be improved?
Thank you. We've been assisting. We've been trying to support private investors who want to produce some of the inputs that are required by the mining companies, but which at the moment are not being produced. For instance, one common product which is used by mining companies is activated carbon. It is used by the gold producing company. It is a substance that is used to absorb gold from solution. Unfortunately, we are not in the position. There is no company in the country that is producing that. But we had a number of private investors approaching it. Lecturers from University of Mines and Technology, lecturers from KNUST, who have done some research on these things and want to be given the opportunity and then the support to produce them. We assisted one or two who were meeting the AFDB, African Development Bank, to present their research findings to them to see whether they can get support. So we're trying as much as possible to see how we could be able to do some of these things to support.
So in your estimation, what's the outlook for the policy in the coming years?
It's very bright. Quickly. It is very bright. We believe that it's a good thing that we put in place the local content regulation. Let me say that it was started in 2012, but at that time it was part of a number of regulations that were put together. Last year we had a dedicated local content and local participation law for the mining industry. That's a dedicated one on its own. It is not mixed with other things. We believe that the things that we have in there, if we are able to implement them, we're able to ensure that they are implemented by the mining companies, it will help us a lot. Apart from the services, I am sure you are also aware that certain rules have also been set aside for locals. Human resource rules cannot be occupied by expatriates. Finance and accounting rules are reserved for Ghanaians. Corporate affairs rules have been reserved for Ghanaians. Community and sustainability rules have also been reserved for Ghanaians. Mine manager, the mine manager, general mine manager, who is the head of a mine rule, has also been reserved for Ghanaians. At the commencement of your operation, you can have an expatriate general manager for only a period of 3 years. After 3 years, it has to be localized. So we believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much, Sir Collins Amin-Sackey, for sharing those insights with us. We look forward to having you again from the Minerals Commission next week to continue this conversation and this drive that you're on to make people aware of what's happening in the mining industry and what the Minerals Commission has to offer by way of what the law provides or what mandates has been assigned to it by the law to help local participation in the mining industry and other subjects related to mine. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for adding your voice to this conversation. Mr. Collins Amin-Sackey is the Director, Policy Planning and Minerals Titles of the Minerals Commission, and he's been our guest on